A real quick shout out to the guest speakers on the Pixel Panel episodes of Retro Reloaded. These are heroes that don't wear capes, but maybe some of them they do. They've been filling in for me doing episodes each week so that Retro Reloaded thrives while my voice problems cease to exist for months. Thank you all for being such a great community. Also, quick shout out to our grandstanding 64-bit legend Zero for being such a great supporter of the show. Mega Man should be jealous of the camaraderie. Then at the 16-bit adventurer tier, we have many longtime warriors, including Marcus Q, Gage, Tetrafolly, and Oriok. Then we can't forget our 8-bit explorer time with longtime supporters such as Wabi Yurt, Ware Coon Warden, Gaming Quarterly, Big Nick Dika. Again, thank you for everything.
Hey there! Welcome to Retro Reloaded. I'm your host Lance, and each week I tackle a retro game shaped by your picks. If you want a chance to choose next week's game or unlock exclusive bonus episodes and polls, join me on Patreon at patreon.com/retroreloaded. There's even a free tier to dip your toes in. Big thanks for all of your love and support. It means the world to me. Now let's hit the start button and reload those retro vibes.
Hello Internet, and welcome to the Pixel Panel. I am your host, John, aka Xhojn on Discord, and with me I have
the RetroMartin, also known as the RetroMartin on Discord as well.
Thank you for joining me again.
Always a pleasure.
Now, eagle-eared listeners will notice that once again we are not Lanceroy, because the AI bot that is Lanceroy is still unable to get a recording done, so it is down to people like us to pick up the burden until our AI's overlords are able to do this on their own. And today we will be talking about RPGs again. So those who listened to the last time we were on, with which was Martin hosting, we talked about 8 and 16-bit RPGs, didn't we, Martin?
We did indeed. Ones that weren't on the Super Nintendo, just to sort of vary it up a little bit from the more commonly spoken about ones, and it was a very enjoyable chat.
Exactly. And so after we did that, I was thinking about like my history with RPGs, and because I've been playing them ever since I was a kid, but I actually went through a period of time where I just stopped playing them. I always had the perception of they could take so long to beat. So I just play anything but RPGs, and my backlog of RPGs just kept growing and growing. And then I heard from someone on YouTube about something that they were doing called the 12 RPG Challenge. And so that's going to be our topic for today, because I wanted to kind of share what that challenge is, because me and Martin have been doing it for the last 2 years. And we're going to talk about the games from last year, from 2024. But I want to try and get more people playing these types of games, because, okay, granted, if you want to play like Persona 5 length games, then maybe doing 12 of those a year is probably going to be a bit much. But I wanted to show you like that you can have like a different range of RPGs, and you don't have to like pay 100-hour like, you know, mammoth games to still have an enjoyable RPG experience. Yeah, so what is the 12 RPG challenge? And it's 1 RPG per month, give or take. So the idea being is that you set yourself a challenge of like to complete 12 RPGs in a year. So 1 a month, but it doesn't have to be as strict as that. It could just be like, you know, if you manage to beat one quite with a couple of weeks, then you can move straight on to the next one. You don't have to be like, this is my January game, this is my February game. But an extra like kind of challenge that I did for myself was that I wanted to do it as 1 per console. So I wanted to jump around different eras, but also because like I said earlier on, like having a backlog of RPGs, I didn't want to just do 12 on, say, PC or like PS2. I wanted to go for different generations of consoles. But I think I've been talking for enough. So, Martin, why did you decide to jump in on the 12 RPG challenge, and did you set yourself any kind of restrictions?
So I got involved because you and I had been talking quite a bit in respect to other challenges, because obviously I was setting my Mega Drive challenges on my channel, which you joined in with and stuff like that. And I think you'd noticed that I'd completed both Panzer Dragoon Saga and Shining Force 3 on the Saturn late 2023, and you thought I was a prime candidate to also take part to also take part in this RPG challenge. And I thought it sounded like an absolutely fantastic idea, because it would be an excuse to sort of get on with some games that maybe I hadn't, really done for a while, or ones that I had on the backlog for such a long time. So I went in not with any particular restrictions, because I thought if I try and restrict myself, I might get bored and sort of tap out on it. So I just sort of went with whatever I wanted to play out of the 12, rather than going for like one per console or per franchise or developer or whatever it ended up being. And I think in the end, I actually ended up doing about 8 new games and 4 that I'd done before. So it was still quite a good mix. So that's basically how I got involved with it. And it's proven really, really good fun to do. And obviously taking part in it this year, I've actually completed all 12 before we even hit November. So I'm sort of chilling and not really doing too much in the RPG sphere, although I am still playing extra games. So I've technically finished 13 now, if not 14. And I think when I did it last year, I actually played a couple of games. One that I sort of tapped out on because it was just proving a bit too difficult, and one that I was just playing as a sort of bonus game alongside that I wasn't going to count as part of the 12. So I while I didn't have any restrictions, I did at least add in a little bit of extra effort as well to sort of round it out somewhat with something a little bit different. So yeah, and obviously I'm looking forward to talking about the 12 games that you and I both played last year.
Yes, and as a quick aside, because you mentioned Panzer Dragoon Saga, and that is a fantastic game which, if people have not played, they should definitely play. Yes, it is stupid expensive. Do what we did and either emulate it or use a flash cartridge or ODE on a Saturn to be able to play it, because it is a fantastic game. It's one that is part of the reason probably why I wanted to push myself with the 12 RPG challenge, because I played it in 2023, just before you did, because as soon as you started posting about it, I'm like, yes, play this game. This game's amazing, So it's like, yeah. So the main takeaway from this show, other than playing, 12 RPGs, is also to play Panzer Dragoon Saga.
And also playing Shining Force 3. That was technically 3 games in one. So that was quite the undertaking across a couple of months. But I loved it so much, I literally burned through it in probably less than a month through all 3 games, and there's a reason it's probably my one of my top 5 games of all time.
And for those who don't know, the first part of Shining Force 3 was only released in the West, whereas parts 2 and 3 were fan translations.
Yeah. So we only got part 1. Part 2 and 3 were Japan only, and so our version of Scenario 1, as it's known, actually had a slightly amended ending to sort of cap it off. So when I went to play the translated Japanese version, it wasn't ended. So it actually continued with that sort of cliffhanger moving on to the other 2. So yeah, absolutely epic adventure.
Now we should get into the 12 RPGs of 2024. Okay, so we're not going to spend, because this is going to be 24 games, we're not going to spend too long talking about each game, but I wanted us to kind of cover what the game is, why we picked it, and kind of what our thoughts were. So not go too deep of a dive, but I know some of these is probably going to be a bit difficult because there are some stories behind these, at least there is for me. So the first game, one which we covered on our previous episode, is Luna the Silver Star on the Mega CD. So for me, this was the first game of doing a 12 RPG challenge, and it's one that it had to be the first game. The reason being is that this game and a sequel is the reason why I decided to actually get a Mega CD. But also, those games were never released in PAL territories. So that then started a journey for me of making PAL conversions of Japanese exclusive or Sega CD games. Sorry, Japanese exclusive Mega CD games and US Sega CD games that the PAL territories never got. And Luna, the two Luna games were the first two that I were able to successfully do. The first Luna game required just making sure that the audio played at the right speed for the cutscenes, whereas Luna Eternal Blue, the second one, took me 2 years of blood, sweat, tears until eventually someone else figured out what to do with the audio driver, which I couldn't do. Anyway, so that is why it had to be the first game, because this is a series that I had never played. I had already invested countless hours to get going. So, what is Luna? It is a... how to describe it? When I hear people talking about the Luna series, it is from the same creators as Grandia, which is a more well-known series. But Luna has become, within the last year, more well-known because of the recent remasters, which are based on like the PS1/Sega Saturn, I think, versions, remakes of the Mega CD games, Sega CD games. And it's the style of game is not overly complicated, but it is very like, you feel like you're going on a grand adventure, and it's what a kind of story and experience that kind of stays with you. And there are people who, when they played it back in the 90s, it is like one of their favorite games of all time because of the memories and the experiences it gave them. You play as a boy called Alex who wants to become a dragon master, and then you have to go meet the 4 dragons. But there's a magic emperor who's rising up to try and like take over the world. But yeah, it's a game that, thanks to the remasters, I think everyone should play. There have been several different ports. And if you are a PAL listener like me and you have a Mega CD, then you can also now play it natively on your console without needing any mods or like a EverDrive Pro or anything like that. As long as you can buy a CD, you can now play it. So, Martin.
I mean, Luna was a game I was aware of in the sort of early 2000s when I got online a little bit more. And I was a massive fan of Grandia already anyway, so I'd always wanted to try it out, and I never got round to actually doing it via emulation for some bizarre reason. Like, I'd emulated loads of other Mega CD games, some that I'd played before on an actual console and some that I hadn't, but I never got round to doing any of the Luna games. And curiously enough, Luna Silver Star and its sequel Eternal Blue were actually my first 2 RPGs of this year for the RPG challenge. So I basically completed them both back to back. I enjoyed Silver Star so much, I went straight into Eternal Blue that very evening, even though I probably should have gone to bed as I was due up 5 or 6 hours later, because I'm just that kind of person. But no, the thing with Luna the Silver Star specifically is it's quite a normal RPG. Like, in terms of its story and everything else, it's not break the bank. It's not going to set the world on fire. But because of just how good fun it is, and it's very whimsical in a lot of ways.
The presentation.
Say again?
Say the presentation of it.
Yeah, the presentation, yeah. Like, just the overall aesthetic and everything else, and with the fact it's got the really decent animated cutscenes, it's got the voice acting as well. It's just the whole package put together just made it quite a stellar piece of work for 1993, I believe it came out. And, you know, if taking it in the context of when it released, it would have been miles ahead of anything else that had come out, because you consider at that point we hadn't even had some of the more seminal SNES RPGs like Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, Star Ocean, or Tales of Phantasia at that point. And yet Luna would have definitely been on that sort of level in terms of its quality. And I think that's one of the things that really speaks to a lot of people when they say that it's one of their favorites. So it's definitely an RPG absolutely worth playing. And now that you've converted it, of course, it's now more accessible to a lot more people around the world.
And I heard apparently that before the release of Luna in Japan, the Mega CD wasn't necessarily doing that well. Don't be wrong, it's not like it was like a successful console over there, but Luna was kind of like the killer app it needed to get units shifted, to get the actual Mega CD into people's hands, because the Japanese love an RPG, and the Mega CD didn't have one, but suddenly they had what they wanted. So anyway, we said we won't go too long into these games, but I think Luna was a special case. Well, I say that we're probably going to just spend equally as long. Anyway, Martin, what was your first game of 2024?
So I actually had two first games, because this is the one I mentioned earlier where I didn't actually complete it because it got a bit too hard. So I was determined that I was finally going to complete a Dreamcast game that I had played back in the day a few times, but never really got miles and miles into. And I'd picked up a copy the year before, and that was Record of Lodos War Advent of Cardis, which is basically
Quite
the Record of Lodos War is like a Japanese version of Dungeons and Dragons, effectively. It's like their take on it. It's quite well known. It's got lots of novellas, manga, anime, OVAs, video games, you name it, including a nice strategy RPG on the Mega CD as well, which needs translating. But I digress. So this is more of a sort of Diablo clone that follows on from the OVA in a way, where you actually play one of the characters from it, although you don't actually know that at the time. And all the main characters from the show, if you will, like Deedlit and Pan and all that lot, they all show up in it, and they're sort of NPC characters. But the problem is the game hits a bit of a brick wall where you just get utterly assailed by enemies that are miles ahead of you. So it requires an awful lot of grinding at one point, and it just got to a point where I was repeating the same stretch 20, 30 times to try and get through it. So I was starting to get a little bit peed off with it, so I gave up. I admitted defeat at the first hurdle and put it to one side, and I still haven't finished it, unfortunately. So I then jumped onto my actual first game, which was Grand Stream Saga on the PlayStation, which was probably more well known to people because it was on a PlayStation demo disc with Official PlayStation Magazine, which gave us access to a lovely animated cutscene, including a nice little shower scene, which I'm sure every teenage boy in the world loved. A boss fight. Yeah, there was a boss fight and also a small section of a level as well. So you got quite a good range of bits to try out in the game. And it's basically like a top-down polygonal RPG rather than being a sort of sprite-based one or anything like that. And effectively you follow Eon, who is living on a very small section of land that's floating in the sky. And it turns out that there's only a few continents left, and they're all floating in the sky now, and they're very, very small, and bits are falling off. So eventually everyone's going to die. And you basically go on a quest that sets you by some disembodied voice effectively asking you to locate his daughter, Arcia. And what follows then is you actually discover that you're in a sort of redo of, or sort of like a post-apocalyptic event effectively that you may have actually caused. And I won't say any more about the story from there because it will spoil what actually, while the game itself is relatively average in a lot of its ways, it's quite slow. It doesn't really handhold you at all. It can be quite tough. And the translation's a little bit ropey in places. The story is actually very, very well done when you get towards the end and you work out what's going on. And unlike a lot of RPGs, you actually do have multiple endings, albeit two in this case, to try from. So you can sort of redo the ending again. But it had some lovely animated cutscenes that look like they were done by a proper animation company. And the combat, it tends to be one-on-one, so you only fight one enemy at a time or one boss, but it's action-oriented and basically has you either flinging magic or moving around the arena and swinging your sword or axe or whatever it is. And it's actually a really, really fun combat, and it'll be quite familiar to people who've played games like Soul Blazer and Terranigma in a way, because it's actually by a sub-studio within Quintet, who were the people that made those games. So it's sort of like the unofficial fourth game in that trilogy of SNES RPGs. So, I ended up really, really enjoying it. I probably won't play it again for a very long time, but I'm very, very glad I managed to finally complete my copy I picked up about 20 years ago. So, yeah, it took a long time coming, but I finally got there. But what's your experience of any of Lanceroy Saga, John?
So I'm not sure if I ever heard of it until I saw you posting online about playing it. But I know Quintet because back in 2023, I played the first of the Quintet trilogy as such, Soul Blazer, and this year I played the second game, Illusion of Gaia, or Illusion of Time, as it was known in PAL. But I still need to play Terranigma. So potentially after I play those three, maybe I'll go and play Grand Stream Saga because, Quintet. So, but we'll see.
We'll see. There is one funny little thing to it that you can actually get the ultimate weapon near the start of the game if you know where it is. But it's a missable item, so if you don't get it, you can't get it. But it basically trumps every other weapon you can get in the game. Seems like a very oddball inclusion, but maybe I'll do that on my next playthrough for a bit of a laugh.
I mean, do you think because you haven't tried the weapon, you might not be able to answer this, but does it break the game, like the experience? Like, if you do get that for your first playthrough, does that just go, well, it trivializes the game?
It probably would, because we're talking like your first weapons are sort of like 10 attack power, and this has got something like 130 attack power. So the last weapon you can get that's the most powerful is a bit less than that. So even then, you're basically getting the best weapon in the game straight away. You can still die quite easily because obviously you're not getting better armor, but you can probably destroy most things quite quickly. But you're not going to find it by accident unless you're really trying hard to look for things. So it's not something you're really going to come across easily, but it's just a random little bit of trivia I thought I'd throw in there.
Sure. Okay. And now for my second game, which is Final Fantasy XII on the PC. So this was the remake, The Zodiac Age. And I picked it because it's a Final Fantasy game. I never played the PS2 original, and at one point I told myself I would never play beyond the 1 to 10 games. I'd be like, okay, 11 and 14 are MMOs, because at one point I was like, oh, I'll play every mainline entry, but then, like, how am I meant to beat MMOs? 11 is a different conversation, because me and Martin have both been playing that, but we will not get into that here, because otherwise we'll be here for a long time. But I ended up playing about 9 years ago, I think it was. So like, I ended up getting Final Fantasy 13 for like, I think $5, thanks to Steam gift card I was given, sort of PC. So New Year's Day, I was in bed, started playing Final Fantasy 13, and then I was like, okay, maybe I will carry on with the series. And then I picked up 12, and I heard like some mixed things about it, but also what helped was that a friend of mine who only lives 2 doors up from me, one of my drinking buddies as well, he actually started playing it as well on the PS4 or PS5, whichever. And so that then became kind of like a community experience, because we'll talk about, like, where we are in the game, how we're finding it. And so the reason why this was kind of like got mixed opinions from some people was because this was definitely not like, there was no random encounters, no turn-based combat. This is, you see all the enemies on the field, and you don't actually control your characters. You set up macros. For those who aren't aware, macros is like it's like a computer thing where you say, like, if you see an enemy attack, if your health is below a certain percentage, use a heal item or use a cure spell. If you see if you see someone is poisoned, use an antidote. Like, you, ahead of all the combat, you set up pretty much the triggers of what the combat should be. But you don't get all of the, like, what you can do straight away. You have to, like, buy them from shops as you go through the game. So you are limited initially in what you can get your characters to do, but as time goes on, then you can expand that. And usually I would put my money into being able to buy these things when they became available, so then I could automate all this. One of the things that I think also probably did not hold back on the PS2 release was that the game was very, well, I say slow, not because of frames per second, as in because it's just the game was just slow to go through. Whereas with the remaster, they give you the ability to do 2 times speed and 4 times speed. This does not affect music. It does not affect cutscenes. This is only for when you're in actual gameplay. So initially, I was like, okay, just do it at normal speed. And it didn't take long before I'm going, okay, this is taking ages just to walk everywhere. Change to 2 times speed. Then a while later, okay, 4 times speed. And I just pretty much played the rest of the game at 4 times speed. And it helped so much. I could see why people probably thought it was a bit of a drag back when it was released, because otherwise, even at those high speeds, it still took ages to get around the place. It's curious, Final Fantasy 12 is in the same universe or same like area as like Final Fantasy Tactics, I think it is. Like there's like a range of games which are all kind of like not necessarily connected, but it's the same land. So yeah. So Martin, have you ever played Final Fantasy 12?
So yeah, I got 12 back when it came out on the PS2. So I'd actually played and completed pretty much all of the Final Fantasy series up to that point, except for I believe the 3rd game, which I had got to the end of, but just never finished off the final boss on the Famicom version, and the remake hadn't come out at that point. I was an active Final Fantasy 11 player at the time as well, so I was quite used to the semi-real-time combat and making macros and things like that. So I slotted in with the gameplay style quite nicely, although the Gambit system, as it was known for the macros in Final Fantasy 12, was I wasn't proficient with it to make basically, blitz the game. I really enjoyed the story of it and the way it was presented, because it was a much more political intrigue style story instead of some absolutely insane fantasy thing. So I quite liked that. And there was a few cast members that I thought were utterly useless and pointless, notwithstanding the de facto main character Varn, who didn't even need to be there, in my opinion. But unlike 10, which I do not consider to be one of the best in the series at all, it's good. It's a very good game, but I consider it quite a low point. The cast were relatively abysmal in that, apart from a few standouts. With 12, I felt that more than half of the cast were pretty good, which was nice. I did like that it was set in the Ivalice sort of world, because I believe the whole collective term is called the Ivalice Alliance. So you had Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy 12, and Vagrant Story were the sort of 3 games that were set in that particular world at the time. Obviously, there's been a few more since, with a couple more Final Fantasy Tactics games and all that. So I think it was meant to be a bit more spun off, but I don't think they really went anywhere with it, apart from just continuing the tactics stuff. But I understand why a lot of people didn't like 12. It certainly was a lot muddier in terms of graphics compared to Final Fantasy X, which was a lot cleaner. So I think a lot of people considered it to be a downgrade, but what they didn't consider was that the world looked a lot more vibrant. You're walking around places like Rabanastre and stuff like that, and there's loads of NPCs walking around their everyday lives. So it definitely made the sort of world pop a lot more, in my opinion. At the time, I got to the very final boss in the game, and I got to his 2nd form and died. And I never actually went back to try him again, because I'd really struggled to get that far at that point, because I started to get really... I found the game very hard after a certain point, and I was basically just struggling through, and I was enjoying it, but I was finding it very hard to get any further. So I didn't actually complete it until the remake, which I got on the PlayStation 4, which has got a slightly different gameplay system in terms of the jobs to the original, because it's based on a re-release in Japan, which was called the Zodiac job system, which it wasn't massively different, but it just made things a bit more rigid in terms of the jobs you assigned to the various characters. But the extra speed definitely helped, because you could turn it on and off at will with a button on the PlayStation 4, which meant you could basically speed up the grinding and then go back to normal when you were going through the other stuff. So yeah, I really liked Final Fantasy 12. I thought it was the 2nd best of the PlayStation 2 games. I definitely consider Final Fantasy 11 to be an absolutely stellar title, so that will always be my favourite of those 3, with 10 firmly at the bottom, which is going to annoy an awful lot of people, but I don't care. So yeah, 12 was really, really good. I quite enjoyed it, to be honest with you, and absolutely fantastic choice for your second game.
Oh, thank you. I've been wanting to play it for a little while, but it's a game that was never really. It never really went on discount, enough of a discount that I wanted. So in the end, with the 12 RPG challenge, I bit the bullet and got it for maybe it was like, because I think I got 13 for like a fiver. I think I probably maybe got this for maybe 10.
I wouldn't pay £2 for that game. Awful.
We're not here to talk about the rest of the Final Fantasy series. What is your second game?
So I went a little bit different for my next one. I went a bit more Western and picked something based on the Dungeons and Dragons franchise. And I went with Neverwinter Nights, the 2002 game, not the weird online one that came out 10 years later. So I actually picked this up randomly. I don't know what made me buy it. I got it. It was just the base game. I didn't have any of the expansions, although I'd later pick up the first expansion in a double pack with the base game, so that sort of replaced it. And effectively, it is very much Dungeons and Dragons, just in video game form. So it does all the dice rolls and takes all your feats into account. And what I really liked about Neverwinter Nights was the story was very basic. You know, it's a fantasy story. You go off and do your cool stuff, and you make your way through it. But I, again, found it really, really hard to get into gameplay wise. But I really enjoyed the world and the job system. Well, the job system, I'm going Final Fantasy there. The class system, which kept me playing it. And eventually, I actually managed to work out what I was doing wrong. And I was actually able to get myself through the game. And it is an extraordinarily long game. Like there's 4 or 5 chapters, and each chapter will take you hours and hours and hours and hours if you do all the side quests as well. But as I said, what I really liked about this was the class system, and it's again based on D&D, and it just has an awful lot of classes available in it. So you know, I was big into thieves in video games when I first got it, so I was always playing as a rogue at the time. I later on started dabbling with the magic classes because games like Final Fantasy VII soured me on magic users because physical attacks were just much better. So I didn't really play magic users in RPGs for a very long time. But when I played it for the RPG challenge, I'd actually got the remaster on the Switch, and I'd already completed the game before, but I wanted to go through it again. And so what I did was I actually completed the base game and the first expansion as part of the second RPG challenge. I didn't quite get through the third one because that one was a bit more of a multi-flawed raid style type thing where it just got harder and harder and harder and harder. And so I didn't really bother with that one too much because the story was a bit but I went through it as a druid because I was really getting into sort of shape-shifting style classes at the time. And I cross-classed when I was able to into the more advanced classes as a shifter. So I was able to turn into things like big griffins and manticores and stuff like that and just decimate everything. And I thought that was really cool because I could just keep the visuals fresh, and I wasn't just looking at the same character all the time. I was constantly changing. So I really enjoyed going through it. There was a lot of deaths, a lot of reloading, but I got there in the end with both the base and the expansion, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time through it. Have you ever played Neverwinter Nights before?
No, I haven't actually, but I recently got it as part of a bundle. So there was a Humble bundle that had a bunch of like the old games, and so I do. It's one that I've heard of years and years ago, but I've never replayed any of the like PC Dungeons and Dragons games. I now own like majority of them, so I need to get into them. But it's just the length of them kind of like makes me think, do I want to get into this? Especially with the amount of classes, it's just I will play it one day, but I'll probably start with Baldur's Gate before getting into Neverwinter Nights. But I know it's pedigree, so.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate is definitely a good one to start with. I played a little bit of that, as well as a Game Boy Advance version, rather amusingly. But I think Baldur's Gate was the first one in this sort of series because Neverwinter Nights is a spin-off from that, in essence. But as they always say, there's a class for everyone, so I'm sure you'll find one that you can enjoy.
Yes. But now, time for my third game, and it is one that I wasn't planning to play, but I was gifted it, and then so, not that I felt like I had to play it, no, not at all, but the fact that somebody was kind enough to give me this game, and I was trying to build my list of 12 games from different consoles, I thought, yes, okay, I will play this. And it is Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood on the DS. So this is Sonic the Hedgehog in RPG form. So, and it ends on a cliffhanger, which will never be resolved due to a legal dispute about some of the characters in the game and the Archie comics. So, the writer that was at BioWare, sorry, this game was made by BioWare, yes, the Mass Effect people. The writer of the game has written online about what would have happened in the second game. But yeah, in this game, you control all the Sonic characters, and you even get to control Dr. Robotnik. I am not calling him Dr. Eggman, Dr. Robotnik, as well as part of your party for a time. And you all have like unique skills. One thing that I did struggle with, because it's the DS, they also had touchscreen controls. And I really struggle with some of the special attacks because the way that when you're watching the instruction for doing it, you go to like put the stylus on the screen to start the attack, but I kept failing. And so one thing then, like when I was reading up on it, because it was really hampering my ability to like the end of the game because of like I needed to do the special attacks, was that you just put your stylus on the screen before the attack begins, and then you do like what it's asking you to do. Because normally it's like drawing a line in a certain direction or something, but because of you putting the size of the screen at the beginning, it wasn't registering it. So anyway, there's a top tip if anyone decides to play this game. So in this game, it features other echidnas that, which for me was actually quite interesting because as someone who, as we mentioned on our previous show, grew up reading Sonic the comic, the echidna tribe was something that was always like, oh, where are Knuckles' people? So this was kind of like a cool thing to see after all these years. It's an all right game. Again, it's not one that is like it's not a masterclass of RPG. It's not at all. But I appreciate like using the Sonic license for something different. And yeah, it was an enjoyable experience. Like I would put on the TV and just play it because you don't have to like pay too much attention to it. Outside of like the stylus combat bit for special attacks, otherwise you could just do attacks as normal. Anyway, so Martin, did you play Sonic Chronicles?
Again, I got it back when it came out, and I still have my copy. I never actually finished it off. I got really quite far. I think we were there was a point in the story where you were in a spaceship and you go through like a warp tunnel or something, and one of the main bad guy echidnas or whatever is sort of starting to see your side of things or something along those lines, and I didn't really progress. So I think I was in like the latter couple of chapters or whatever, but I enjoyed the game. I like you, I found the special ability tapping quite finicky, but most of the time I could get there. And I enjoyed that it was a more mature story, albeit you can tell it was written by someone that grew up with Archie Sonic and not Sonic comic or anything like that, like because it's very much in that style. But as enjoyable as it was, it just didn't grip me in the same way as a lot of other games. So I will go back to it at some point, I'm sure, to finish it off. But yeah, it's not the strongest Sonic property, but it's a nice curio, something a little bit different on the system. Which, yeah, I'd urge people to give it a try, to be honest with you.
Cool. Okay, and your third game?
I betrayed my beloved Sega for my third game. And in the opposite way from you, you went with a Sonic RPG. I went with a Mario one. And I completed the remake. Yeah, I completed the remake of Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. we didn't get the original game in PAL territories on the Super Nintendo, so it was completely unknown to me because obviously not being as big a Nintendo head in general. I discovered it in probably like 2000, 2001 when I was starting to emulate some SNES games. And I actually completed it, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic game because I'm lukewarm on Mario. Some games are good, some games are all right, but I quite enjoyed this one. So I picked up the remake when it came out and didn't play it to start with because I knew that we were doing this RPG challenge. So I thought I'd save it for that. And I think a few of us in the group actually did it roughly around the same time. And it's very much a like-for-like remake. There's probably like an extra couple of percent in it in regards to a super boss that's Final Fantasy inspired, because obviously Square Enix were the ones, well, Squaresoft made the original game, Square Enix as they're known now. So apart from that, every other aspect of the game is exactly the same, with just the addition of a special team super attack that you can activate as well. So I went in knowing exactly what was going to happen, exactly what I had to do. And yeah, again, it's not the greatest RPG to ever be conceived, but it's a very, very enjoyable one. It's got a soundtrack from Yoko Shimomura, who's done Street Fighter 2 and Kingdom Hearts. So, you know, there's a lot to enjoy about it. It's like a solid 8 out of 10 game. If you buy it, you're definitely going to enjoy it. Like I said, it's not going to top any top 10 lists. But have you got to playing it yet?
So I do have a Switch, so I have not played the remake. But like you, when I was getting to emulation when I was younger, I played it that way. Yeah, I actually enjoyed it. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, because again, we didn't get Final Fantasy games here either, so I didn't really know Square that well. But until like doing emulation. But like I enjoyed it, and even like one of the characters they created for that game became like my password for like years after, like a decade or two afterwards for that. I don't use it now, so don't bother trying to figure it out. But I didn't beat it at the time. But then several years ago, I decided, okay, because I got to Bowser's Castle, but I never beat Bowser's Castle. So I decided, okay, I will, finally finish it off, which I did. And yeah, like I say, it's an enjoyable game, and it would have been nice if we had actually got it in PAL territories when we were growing up.
Let me guess, your password was, you strike me as a Mallow kind of guy.
Ding, 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 ding.
I was going to go with Gino, but I thought, no, you strike me as a Mallow.
Well, because it's a name that it's not used anywhere else for anything. So it's like, how was anyone ever going to guess it? It's not even a game that was released here. So
yeah, no, good choice. So, but yeah, like it's a solid game that's worth playing. Not going to top lists, but definitely a good one. And the Super Boss features a tune from the greatest Final Fantasy game of all time, Final Fantasy IV. I will not be taking any other answers on that one from anybody. What was your next game then, number 4?
Okay, so originally I thought I should play this as game number 3, but I realised that after I had beaten Sonic, and that is Breath of Fire 3 on the PS1. So when I was getting to emulation, even though I owned a GBA, I still emulated some GBA games, and a couple that I did was Breath of Fire 1 and 2. Because even though they were originally SNES games, they then got GBA ports. And I really enjoyed actually playing it via emulation, because it was on the family computer, and if I had a sick day from school, I would just like grab my duvet, just sit on our computer chair with it wrapped around me, playing like through these RPGs. I mean, I didn't play them back to back, but like over the course of time. But I never had a PlayStation growing up. But I have a PS Classic, which I've hacked. And one of the first things I did was to add on games like Breath of Fire 3. Because I've been wanting for decades to play the next game in the series, but never got the opportunity to. Yes, it got re-released on the PSP. I don't have a PSP. And it's never got a port to PC, to my knowledge. Even though 4 recently did get a PC port, thanks to GOG. But anyway. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And after having played other PS1 RPGs, like, say, the Final Fantasy games on there, which went fully kind of like 3D polygons or kind of that stuff, this was really fascinating because it is. I'll try and describe this right. Imagine you're playing like a SNES 2D JRPG, but with extra elements that could only be done by something like the PlayStation because of the extra hardware. So even though you might have like a top-down kind of like not like fully pixel art style, but it's still trying to keep that same kind of style. But then you have like the bosses, which look so much more detailed, that are coming up on the screen, which are not like pixel animated. And then the effects that are happening on the screen as well had to be done by the PS hardware. So when I beat it, said that if you imagine that Final Fantasy VII was a revolution of the JRPG kind of genre going from 2D to 3D, this is an evolution of the 16-bit to the next generation. Oh, yeah. Martin, how about you? Have you played Breath of Fire 3?
I have indeed. I played the third one on the PlayStation as I borrowed it from my cousins who owned it. And I got really far in the first half because obviously partway through the game there's sort of like a few years gap, isn't there? And I never breached that point. But I enjoyed what I played. I didn't like how much grinding there tended to be at times. And there were a few other aspects of it that I wasn't a huge fan of, but I thought it was a really, really good RPG. I then obviously went back and played the first two on the Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, because we didn't get the original game in PAL regions on the
Shocking.
SNES. I know, shocking. We got the second one, though. I haven't played the Game Boy Advance ports at all. And I picked up the fourth game as well on the PlayStation, which I haven't got amazingly far in, but I know you've completed at some
This
point.
year.
And I have got the fifth one on the PS2, which I've never completed because it's blooming hard. I didn't own 3, but I do now, thanks to the PSP ports, which I believe only came out in Japan and PAL regions. I don't think it came to America for whatever bizarre reason.
Now you know how it feels for us.
Yeah, exactly. Not the first time that's happened. We had that with Tales of Eternia as well, with its proper name. Americans didn't get a PSP port of that, but they did get it on the PlayStation. We didn't, albeit they had to put up with the name change. I digress. But no, 3, it's got a really, really good casts in it. I really enjoyed the combat. I liked how Ryu, the main character, actually changed how he attacked depending on how far through the game you were. So he starts off like shirking away and swinging his sword around out the back of his hand to start with while sweating, and then he'll start slicing it properly. And as he progresses and becomes more confident, I thought that sort of like level of detail, which Capcom were quite renowned for, I thought that was a really, really good inclusion. So it had lots of elements that, while some aspects of it were quite backwards, there was a lot that was actually really, really forward thinking, and I think it made it an absolutely phenomenal game on the PlayStation, and definitely one that's worth picking up. And obviously, if it is too expensive, get it on PSP, because the PSP is region free.
Yay!
So, and tell that to the amount of Japanese games I've imported on the PSP. But yeah, no, I really, really enjoyed Breath of Fire 3. Yeah, definitely a brilliant game.
Yep, definitely. And what was the game number 4 for you?
So all the Gust fans are going to be cheering at this one. A year or two beforehand, I had completed the first Atelier Riser game. I'd never played any of the Atelier series up to that point. I tried it out on a whim. I did struggle to get into the alchemy side of it because I thought it was a bit overly complex. It took a long time for me to get used to it, but I got there in the end. I really liked how whimsical it was. It was very laid back. It had a very distinct style all of its own, and I really enjoyed it. So I picked up and played for this last year's RPG challenge, Atelier Riser 2, Lost Legends and the Secret Fairy, which is set a year or two later, I believe. And it basically follows the protagonist of this particular sub-trilogy, because there's 3 of them now, Rosalind Stout, as she goes to the really big city on the mainland, trying to discover the origins of some artifacts, and a lot of the characters from the original game return, and you pick up quite a few new ones. The alchemy's been simplified ever so slightly, which did make it a bit easier to pick up. And I just thought that the game itself was a massive upgrade over the first one. Like, everything was just bigger, better. There was a lot more put into the combat, for example. And with the easier alchemy as well, it just made it a much more welcoming game. So unlike the first one, where I took a massive break from it and then went back to it because I was struggling with some of the combat, this one I basically smashed through from beginning to end quite quickly, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it is an absolute crime that I haven't actually picked up the third one yet, albeit in hindsight that's actually a great thing, because they're now releasing the trilogy together with loads of additional characters in. So as I said, in hindsight, that's probably worked in my favour, because now I can just pick up the trilogy instead. But yeah, it's certainly obviously, not having really played any of the other Atelier games. I played the follow-up one as a demo, Atelier Umia, and I wasn't as sold on that one, to be honest with you. So I definitely say that the Atelier Riser series is one that's worth going into, but you do need to play them in order. There's no point jumping in with two without playing one, because a lot of it will go over your head and you won't understand a lot of the story beats. So have you played any of the Atelier series at all, John?
I'm afraid not, so I can't really say much about them. I've heard of them, but that's due to people like yourself playing it, but I honestly don't think I've ever remembered them even getting released. So sorry, I don't have much to say here.
Oh, that helps keep the runtime down a little bit, doesn't it? So it's not always the worst. But no, I definitely recommend it. So what did you play for your... We're up to 5 now, I think, aren't we?
Yes. So this is one I only heard about a couple of years ago, and it is Defenders of Oasis on the Game Gear. So this is not a very long RPG, and it's a traditional RPG. The reason why I was quite interested by it, originally I wondered if this was somehow related to Beyond Oasis. It's not. In no way, shape or form is it related, but the name made me wonder if it had. So this game is set, like, imagine like Aladdin, kind of Arabian Nights kind of setting. So you I'm trying to remember the actual story of it, but you play as a prince whose kingdom is attacked because someone's trying to get the MacGuffin, and then you end up building a party of 4 characters, one of which is a genie or a djinn, as they're known, and then you have to go and rescue your betrothed and save the world from like a dark wizard, I think it was. It's not. It doesn't do anything like that spectacular. The reason why I kind of really wanted to kind of talk about it was that I really felt like I was in kind of like one of these Arabian Nights kind of stories. You know, it's not really a setting that I see get used that much in this way, and especially for like the era when it was released, you know, it's surprisingly solid. So if you have a Game Gear and looking for an RPG to play, I would definitely recommend this. And funny enough, I saw this like last week in my local CEX, but because I don't own a Game Gear, I did not pick it up. I think it was boxed as well, actually. So, but yeah, Martin, have you ever played Defenders of Oasis?
So to follow on from your answer to my game last, I haven't really. I think I touched it for maybe about 5-10 minutes to see what it was. I downloaded it off the Game Gear Virtual Console on the 3DS back when that was still a thing. And I've definitely seen the box many times in the past, so I recognise the artwork pretty much instantly. But no, it's not one I really know too much about, unfortunately, so I can't really comment. However, unlike you, I do have a Game Gear, so I can.
There you go.
I can get to it on one of 2 different machines.
Cool. In which case, then, please lead us into your next game.
So I know this is one you have played and you like very, very much, and all the Sega fans are going to be cheering. The original Phantasy Star.
Yay!
Yay! And there was
which port?
So I have played it on the Master System via emulation at the time. and couldn't get on with it because I kept dying straight away because of the way the game is. So I didn't really sit down with it until last year when I did it for the challenge. And I went with the Switch Sega Ages port like a clever boy because I could use the built-in map that it maps out for you as you go. Because I'm old and I don't particularly want to be writing out loads and loads of maps on paper.
Oh,
Yeah, with time and jobs. But yeah, the original came out in 1987 on the Sega Mark III, and then obviously the Master System in the West. And was a very early sci-fi RPG with a female protagonist, as we mentioned in the last show, because it did come up. There's only 4 playable characters in it, and the way the game works is it's all top-down RPG style when you're in the towns and on the world map, and it does have random battles, but when you're in a random battle, it becomes a first-person affair, very similar to the Dragon Quest series, but you don't see your characters at all in this one. And then obviously you just pick from menus to do your stuff. And when you're in certain dungeons, or every dungeon, it becomes a first-person dungeon crawler, with you obviously having massive mazes of rooms and corridors that you've got to get through. And some of the dungeons are really, really short, and the exit might be just a few steps away, but you'll end up going the wrong way and off on a massive tangent, opening chests and other things. And some of them are just big, sprawling labyrinths set on multiple floors. So the mapping system definitely helps, but it still isn't going to magic pill your way through it. You're still going to have to do an awful lot of exploration because you've got to map out yourself. So the Switch Sega Ages port is definitely a great way to experience this game because it just gives you a few quality of life improvements that makes it a lot more palatable for people that might not like those sort of older RPGs. I've got no problem with them, but I'm 40. I'd rather make my life a little bit easier sometimes nowadays. But yeah, certainly an absolutely incredible game. It's got an incredible legacy as well, and it's quite well renowned among a lot of people in a lot of regions. And wow, is there anything you can add about Phantasy Star?
so I played it thanks to the GBA port of they did a collection of 1 to 3. The thing that I really am confused about, though, is why have Sega not brought this to anywhere else? Because only was the release you're talking about with the map was only released on the Switch. Why is it not on other consoles and PC? I don't know. Did Nintendo pay for an exclusivity deal or something? Well, who knows? But anyway, yeah. If you want to know more about the Phantasy Star series, listen to our previous Pixel Panel show on the channel. And I guess that means I go on to game number 6 then, which is Paper Mario on the N64. So for this one, my sister had an N64 back when it was released, and I played it a lot. I remember seeing Paper Mario coming out. We actually did get this one in PAL. So and I remember being advertised, but I never picked it up, or we never picked it up. And then several years later, I got a GameCube. I did not pick up the sequel, Thousand Year Door, but about 8 years ago, I had a phase of buying GameCube games that I did not get the first time round and building up my collection, one of which was Paper Mario and Thousand Year Door. I now own the GameCube sequel, which people say is better than the original. But I am wired in a certain way that says I have to play the games in order. Even though one person saying, don't bother playing the first game, just play Thousand Year Door. No, I will play the first game. And I said that for years and never got around to it. But doing the 12 RPG challenge, I was like, well, eventually I do want to play Thousand Year Door. I guess, I will have to go and play, Paper Mario. So that kicked me to finally do it. And I really did enjoy it. In comparison to Thousand Year Door, it's a bit more basic than that, but it has so much charm and it has humor. And I think it was a well-done RPG. People normally say the N64 had no RPGs, or hardly any. Okay, debatable, but it definitely had Paper Mario. And I think if you even though the series has changed a lot in the years since, I think you should still go back and play it. And Paper Mario was added to the Switch online store, so you can now play it. If you have a Switch now or Switch 2. So I'll say give it a try, especially as we've now also got the remaster on Switch of Thousand Year Door. So if you want to play the sequel, I would probably say don't play them back to back. Will be the other thing, because they are so similar that I think you probably might get a bit bored if you play them immediately after one another. So maybe leave a bit of a gap. And I forgot to say at the top of the show, what other restriction I placed on myself was that I would not play games from the same series as part of the 12 challenge. So in other words, I would not do Paper Mario then Thousand Year Door as part of the same year of RPG challenge. I forgot to say that at the beginning. Anyway, so yeah, Paper Mario, Martin, have you ever played it?
I have indeed. I wasn't aware of it back at the time, but I downloaded it on a whim on the Virtual Console on the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
And I played it through about 80% of the way. I'd got the last character that you get.
Yep.
The game's got an amazing cast. Like this,
Yep.
if you like the Mario series, like each character is so good, and they all have their uses, which is brilliant. And I just never actually got around to finishing it, which is a real shame. I should still have the save file, so I could potentially just go finish it off quickly.
Do it!
Yeah, do it. I do have most of the sequels. I picked up Origami King on the Switch. I've got Super Paper Mario on the Wii, which I haven't played at all. And I do actually have both the Switch and GameCube original of Thousand Year Door, which I've not played yet because I wanted to finish up. I'm like you. I'm wired to want to play things in order. However, there is a word for it. It's called correct. So yeah, no, it is a smashing game. It's got a lot of humor in it. It looks brilliant, and it plays really well. I mean, I wouldn't have said again. It's definitely not a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, but it is an absolute solid game that if someone bought it for you as a present, you would play it and you'd enjoy it no end. And that's pretty much all I can say about Paper Mario. It's definitely worth playing.
Great. And what was your number 6 game?
My number 6, I swung round a bit and went with something a bit more popular, and I played Final Fantasy 15. So I got Final Fantasy 15 in the year after it released, or at least back in 2016, and I got it in 2017, or albeit at the very end of 2016 as a Christmas present, and I didn't start playing it till 2017. And I got just the base version, and I played it through and completed it before the downloadable content started coming. And unlike a lot of people, I felt the game was complete. Like, the story made perfect sense. You didn't need to know all of the side bits because that's not how stories work. Some things don't need to be shoved in your face. I really liked the core cast. I liked the story beats. The game looked good. It had phenomenal music from Yoko Shimomura. And I genuinely didn't understand why a lot of people thought it was an awful game. To be honest with you, I thought it was miles better than Final Fantasy 13. I thought it was pretty much on par with 10 in terms of quality. But yeah, it was really good. But I wanted to go through it again with all of the additional DLC, and I think a year or two beforehand, before I did the challenge, I picked up the Royal Edition, which had most of the DLC included in it, apart from one little downloadable episode around the main antagonist, Ardyn. So I used this as an opportunity to go through it, and I effectively 100% completed the game. I did the main game, I did all the DLC, I did all of the side quests. The only thing I didn't do was some optional dungeons, which they all looked exactly the same, and they were like super duper difficult, and I just didn't feel they were worth it and weren't really worth my time completing. So I did the first one and left it at that. But I thought with all the DLC, the game, while it worked perfectly fine in its base form, it definitely made the story come to life a lot more. and you learn more about the tragedy of the main antagonist, Ardyn, who is probably one of the best RPG antagonists of all time. Like his voice, his characterization, the way he prances around. He's basically like Jeremy Irons on cocaine, effectively.
Oh, wow.
He's just so flamboyant. He's sarcastic. He has 20 plans to throw at you for every little situation, and he is just a delight to watch while you are playing the game, basically. So it's worth it just for him alone, to be honest with you. So I thoroughly enjoyed Final Fantasy 15. I'm still not 100% sold on the action combat, to be honest with you. I didn't like the warping around. I thought it was just a bit too quick. It could have been slowed down a little bit on the combat front, but certainly it didn't stop it from being a fantastic game, in my opinion. Have you played 15 yet?
I have not. I don't own it, but it's like now that I'm, willing to play beyond 10, I will get to it eventually. Like, I should probably add it to my Steam wishlist, actually. But it's a game that I know they did like transmedia. In other words, they also did like a film and I think some other bits and pieces as well around it to flesh out like the world and the story. I don't know if you remember those bits.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of the films. There was Kingsglaive and another one. One was sort of like a prequel that literally started when the game started.
Yeah.
The other one was more of a pre-prequel, which was like an animated one, which went into a couple of the backstories of the characters. But there was also a belt-scrolling brawler, sort of Streets of Rage Final Fight style, which followed Noctis's dad and the three main characters that went around the world with him miles in the past before the game started, which was something a little bit different, to be fair, and it was relatively enjoyable. So that's definitely worth a look if you can still obtain it. I don't know if you can or not, and I can't remember for the life of me what it's called, but I got it at the time and thought it was a good laugh.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, so it's one where, because one of the other games coming up has a similar kind of thing of like extra stuff they've done around the games, where, in other words, I don't want to play something where I'm going to have to like go and delve into other media until I've finished off the one I'm currently experiencing. So, but yeah. So, okay. In which case, into my next game, and that is Skies of Arcadia Legends on the GameCube. So this game is probably more commonly known because of it originating on the Dreamcast. But not only a Dreamcast, I got the GameCube. Because I have a GameCube. I didn't get this back in the day. Like with Thousand Year Door, I picked this up about 8 years ago or so during the buy up the games I never got because I had so many good things about it. But it's been sitting on the shelf. So 12 RPG Challenge was the perfect time to give it a try, and I am so glad I did. Like earlier on the show, we talked about Panzer Dragoon Saga, like being such a fantastic game and people should try it. This is the same. Like, it's another Sega RPG which I do not feel gets enough love and people should experience. And there's always rumblings about it getting like a modern release or remaster or something. And apparently Sega have renewed the IP or something, so hopefully that'll happen. But for those who don't know, this game is about Sky Pirates. Sky Pirates. It's a turn-based random encounter game, but you get to explore the world. You're filling out a map as you fly around, and it's the main differences between the Dreamcast original and the GameCube. The encounter rate was a lot higher for the Dreamcast, so if you don't like all the random encounters, go the GameCube port. But the audio is better on the Dreamcast. I haven't played the Dreamcast, but that's what I've been told. Martin will be able to tell us more about that in just a moment. But yeah, it's a game which I hope does get re-released because it is now a pricier game. So Martin, I believe you've played this.
I love how you just know that I'm going to be able to give more information on certain things.
Of course.
yes, I played the original on Dreamcast very briefly at my cousin's. I'd seen it in videos quite a lot, and I thought it looked like a great game. It had like VMU mini games on it as well, which were devolved on the GameCube version into a side quest instead, because obviously the lack of VMU. But I picked up Skies of Arcadia Legends day one on the GameCube, and I still have that copy in immaculate condition, which I'm glad of because it's blooming expensive nowadays. I played it through to the end, but didn't actually complete it 3 or 4 times back in the day.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah, I know. I 100% the game. I looked at every discovery, beat every side boss. Like, I unlocked absolutely everything. I'd get all the way through the final dungeon, and I just wouldn't go off and fight the final boss. And I don't know why. Some sort of past trauma or something. I'm not sure. And I actually finally completed it. I think it was either back in 2022 or 2023. I decided I'm going to sit down, I'm going to complete it. And I started it again from scratch. And again, I went through the entire thing 100%. And I finally went and beat the last boss. And there's a lot of RPGs that I will say are utterly phenomenal. Like, I will tell you all day that Phantasy Star Online and Shining Force 3 and Panzer Dragoon Saga are 10 out of 10 games. Skies of Arcadia, either on the Dreamcast or in its Legends form on the GameCube, is a 10 out of 10 game. It has got an absolutely fantastic cast. You've got your 3 core playable characters and the 3 interchangeable ones. You've got the raft of about 24 crew members. You've got the ship combat, which obviously varies things up quite a lot. I could hear Moonstone Cannon fire like many times. Like, I loved going in and doing fights just for the hell of it. It didn't bother me at all. I loved the ship combat to pieces. The story is really, really good. It's well told. That like the actual setting doesn't miss a beat in any way, shape, or form. The music is phenomenal. I've actually got a re-release of it that was done by YO Records in France, which, yes, you can compare that. Actually, the music on the Dreamcast would have sounded a lot better than on the GameCube, because I think it's the way that the GameCube audio dubbing is done. So the sound effects of the music sound a bit more tinny compared to the DC. But as I mentioned earlier, the VMU games were devolved into a side quest, and the side quest was actually an optional super boss, which you fight 3 times, and it actually reveals more backstory for the one of the main antagonists. And there's also about 12 or something in that region more discoveries to find dotted around the world. So while you do lose that audio fidelity, I think the extra content on Skies of Arcadia Legends makes it a much better experience, because it's just more of the stuff that you would enjoy while playing the game. And I could not recommend this game enough if I tried.
Excellent. So yeah, go and play it, people. So Martin, your next game.
Yes, it certainly plays Skies of Arcadia Legends a hell of a lot more than the game that I played for number 7. I picked a game that came out on the Wii originally, and I got it day one with its Motion Plus attachment that it was supposed to come with. And I played it for several hours, and I put it away and never touched it again, because I thought it controlled the most horribly of all the games I'd ever played in my life. And I'm talking about The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I utterly detested the controls on it, without a shadow of a doubt. I still have not put that back in my Wii once. Could not stand it, hated it, thought it was the worst Zelda game I'd ever played. It got a remaster on the Switch a few years ago, which I picked up, knowing my past trauma with the game, thinking they've added non-motion controls to it. I'm sure it will control better. Thankfully, that was true. It's still a relatively average Zelda game all round. It's not the best one of the bunch, but it's perfectly enjoyable. But the lack of motion controls make it an infinitely more playable game. to be perfectly honest with you. I would urge everyone to play the remaster over the original because, yeah, I can't stress enough how crap the Motion Plus was for that. And yes, I was stood up. I was swinging my arm in the exact direction, and it just wasn't happening on the Wii. So, yeah, it's like I said, it's a decent game. It's got some fun little bits of equipment in it. The dungeons are all right, although it suffers from the sort of more that era of Zelda where they're lessening the dungeons. So all the classic Zelda games used to have 8 dungeons and then the finale, whereas from sort of like after Wind Waker onwards, they lessened the dungeons a lot more. And you'd usually do 3 or 4 bigger dungeons and lots of random side bits before going to the finale. And I don't think that worked very well for the franchise from my personal perspective. And with the fact that the previous game, Twilight Princess, was actually a really good one on the Wii, I was quite disappointed with Skyward Sword, to be honest with you. So I still consider it probably one of the weakest games in the series. Have you played it in any way, shape, or form, John?
Afraid not. Even though I have a Wii, I think back when it was released, I probably wanted to play it, but I never picked it up. And then the years since, I heard all the complaints about the game, and I was like, I don't really want to play this. Because the other thing as well, which I don't know if you felt this as well, but not the controls, but apparently there's like a lot of backtracking, I heard, and that is probably very tedious.
Yeah, there's a lot of backtracking, which does get very annoying.
Yeah, I didn't really like the idea of that. So I think especially not having a Switch or a Switch 2, like I can't play, or a Wii U, I can't play Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom or anything like that. So I think I've kind of accepted that I can't really play the Zelda series anymore, even though I still need to play A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS. That's sat on my shelf staring at me, waiting to be played. Yeah, so, okay, my next game, because I spoke earlier on about like transmedia, of like having a series which has like also a series or books or things like that to help build the world. And I am talking about .hack Infection on the PS2. So this is the first of a quadrilogy of games that were all released to the PS2, and you can actually take your save file through all 4 games. They have now become very pricey, with the 4th one being very, very pricey. It's never been remastered or re-released. They did another quadrilogy of games on the PS2, which has been remastered, but this original set hasn't, and I want to play it because the game is it's an offline MMORPG is the idea behind it. So you are delving into the world, which is an online game in this fictional world. And people play together. You recruit NPCs who are other players who have, like they're not in your game, they're NPCs, but they're actually other people in the world of that this is set in. And sometimes when you want to recruit them, they're just not available. So when I say recruit them, to ask them to join your party, they're not available because they've got their own stuff going on. The reason why I wanted to play it was because back when in the early 2000s, I started getting into anime, and a friend of mine who was the one who was introducing me into like different shows and things lent me the series that is the setup or the prequel to these games called .hack Sign. Which I completed the DVDs, I watched all the show, and then it was like, oh yeah, there's these games as well, but I didn't have a PS2, so I never got to play it. I still don't have a PS2. I'm doing this via emulation, which is how I definitely recommend anyone plays these games, which I'll cover in a moment. But before starting the game for this challenge, I bought my own copy of the box sets of the DVDs, rewatched them, and then started playing the game. The reason why I say about emulating instead is because you can only save when you're in town, and when you're going through dungeons, there will be these portals that will open up, and either a chest can appear or random monsters. And sometimes you can get your ass completely really handed to you, as in a TPK, a team party kill. And if you die in a dungeon, not you individually, but your whole party dies, then it's game over. So you could get through most of the dungeon, gained experience, gained money, gained items. Oh, sorry, no, you don't gain money. You have to sell to gain money. So you gained items and have all that progress wiped out because you went up against an unfair combination of monsters that was thrown against you. So I would say is emulate so that you can quick save in the dungeons. Yeah, .hack infection. I'm not sure if this is a series that you've experienced, Martin.
So I, via my cousin, he lent me .hack infection on the PS2, as well as the DVDs for .hack sign. I watched the first few episodes and I was thoroughly enjoying it, but I don't know why. I just never really bothered continuing it. And with .hack infection, I loved the premise of it being an offline online MMO. But again, I was finding it quite difficult because of the level of grinding it required.
Yep.
And I get quite bored if there's too much grinding. Like, I don't mind a bit of grinding, or if grinding can be made fun. But if you're just constantly doing the same monsters again for hours and hours and hours and hours and only getting maybe one level up, that becomes a problem for me in terms of attention span, because I just think that that's pointless. And it's rather wasteful of a player's time, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think I didn't get massively far into it, but I was hitting that point where I just wasn't progressing, and I think I shelved it probably because another new game came out that I wanted to try or something like that, and I just gave the game back. So I've never really progressed, but I really should finish watching the anime because I really enjoyed it. And obviously at some point try and complete the quadrilogy if I get the chance, because they were worth playing.
Definitely. The other thing as well is that if you're quick saving, you can also then use an emulator's speed up feature to then just kind of like get through that grind. So then, like I say, you have to like quick save a lot, because otherwise you can just, by speeding up, get yourself completely wiped out because haven't got the time to react to like healing or attacking the right like using the right spells for this monster or whatever. But it's if the premise sounds interesting, I highly recommend people giving it a go. I think it's a crime that it's not being re-released, and I think more people should really check out. But like with those caveats of do not play on original hardware, especially considering that if you to pick up the games now, they're not cheap. So, Martin, next game.
My next game was not a cheat per se, because it is a full-blown game, but I'm an active Final Fantasy XIV player, albeit I don't play it massively hardcore. I'm very casual nowadays. And the Dawn Trail expansion released in July of 2024. So I was already playing it during the RPG challenge that year. And so I considered my full playthrough of the story and doing all the other bits around it as my next one. Probably my least favorite expansion out of all of them. The story was a bit boring in the first half. I didn't like a lot of the new characters, and it just felt like a bit of a slog. It picked up massively in the second half with the introduction of another couple of characters who were much better, and it introduced an awful lot of elements from Final Fantasy IX, because 14 has a really good way of basically using the previous 13 games and the spin-offs sort of like Easter eggs, and brings them in as part of the story with some of the characters. So there'll be like a character that was in Final Fantasy VI, who they'll use as a character in the storyline for this. And they'll change the character itself in terms of their backstory and all that, but they'll come with like a remix of the theme that they had. They'll have the same name. They'll have the same sort of like personality. And that was, that's something that the game does really, really well. I felt it used to be a lot better about 5 or 6 years ago. They watered down an awful lot of the job system and made a lot of the jobs more cookie cutter. So I'm not enjoying it to the same degree as I used to back when it was the base game, because I started playing it before the first expansion dropped. And even my wife got massively into it, and she actually follows the story with me. She'll watch me play it. And yeah, I just Dawn Trail just wasn't the one effectively. I wasn't too fond of the new jobs they added. Viper was boring, in my opinion. I did like Pictomancer because that was a massive riff on Realm from Final Fantasy VI, with you sort of painting some monsters and stuff like that. But I haven't really sat down and played that one too much just yet. But I'm at a point where I'm not really going for the story quickly enough. I'm still a little bit behind, but not by much. And I haven't picked up any of the new raids recently or anything, so it definitely hasn't gripped me. And I'm hoping that the next expansion or some of the last couple of patches they released really shaped the game up massively. But it was still enjoyable to a point. You know, it wasn't I'm never playing this again, I'm cancelling my sub. You know, it wasn't that bad. Or whatever. But yeah, certainly the weakest of all the 4 or 5 expansions they've done. You don't play Final Fantasy 14 at all, do you, John?
Afraid not. And if I guess I will one day, but I have to finish 11 first. So there will be a while off.
Yeah, we did try to get you through 11, didn't we? But it was getting quite slow, wasn't it?
Well, no, it also came down to like time, because very, very quickly for the listeners. So I tried playing it several years ago, and then I didn't get on with it. But also, I found it difficult to get into. Whereas then we chatted about it, and like, okay, like, you know, I'll help you out. So I subbed again, but then we like hit a period of time where like you were like moving, so you wouldn't have time to play. So like, okay, I'll end my sub for now. You know, pause it and come back another time. So hopefully 2026, baby.
Yeah. I mean, I got you through some of the missions, so you could see a little bit more of the game and unlock some of the jobs for you. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's not like a sprint to the finish. It's like, you know, it's still massively popular. There's still loads and loads of people who've subscribed. So I doubt it's going to get pulled anytime soon. I just want to beat it while the game is still available to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. What was your 9th game then?
It is Pandora's Tower on the Wii. So this is a action RPG, and it was one of the 3 games that originally I believe weren't going to be brought to the West until like there was a like fan kind of like outcry of, and it was like, was it Project Rainfall? Was it called?
I think that was the one for Xenoblade Chronicles,
and also The Last Story. Whereas to bring those 3 games over. So within this, like I say, it's an action RPG, and there's a time system in it. So the idea is that the game begins with the girl that you're into gets infected, and she's going to turn into a monster unless if you feed her like the meat of other monsters that will then hold it back for a period of time. So you then go to the 13 towers where you have to delve into the towers. So to find meat, and then at the top of each tower is the boss. And once you beat the boss, then or they're called the masters. But you know, if she has the master meat, then there's a chance that you can remove this curse from her. And yeah, it's so each tower has its own unique kind of like its own unique setup, like as in fire, water, that kind of thing. And either way, it's kind of like rinse, repeat, go to a tower, you want to try and get through it, but if you spend too long at the tower before going back, then, you know, the girl will end up turning into a monster. So you have to kind of do like, how far can I get? And you might have to come back, but then the monsters will respawn. So there's a risk reward kind of thing of trying to get through, because you don't want to let her turn too much into a monster, because there is also like a relationship bar, because to get the best ending, you have to build that bar up to not to max, but to high enough, because otherwise you'll get a different ending. So there's several different endings, because once you've beaten the towers, then depending on how far what relationship you have with her will affect the ending of the game. So, but yeah, Pandora's Tower. Have you played it, Martin?
I'm sorry. Before I answer that, I'm going to have to go off the ranch a little bit here. Did you say it was called the Master Meat?
Master's Meat, yes. The
Oh,
Master Meat.
I've been sat here chuckling away to myself, like trying not to.
I know that maybe the localization could be a bit better, but we work with what we're given.
Sometimes those things aren't really thought of, are they? No, I haven't actually played Pandora's Tower at all. I've got the remaster of Xenoblade, and I've got The Last Story, which I picked up in Germany this year because it was like 30 or 40 quid cheaper brand new than it is for a used copy in the UK.
Yeah,
The Pandora's Tower completely skipped me. I haven't got that one at all.
I would definitely recommend it. Like I say, if you're into action RPGs, then definitely give it a try. So
yeah, definitely consider that one. Well,
your next game.
My next game, we'd probably need an entire show for me to talk about if I wanted to, because this is one of my top 10 games on the PlayStation, and I do not say that lightly. And I'm going to get an awful lot of laughs from the listeners, but I don't care. That game is Digimon World.
Digimon, Digital Monsters, Digimon are the champions.
They definitely are the champions. I originally got this game back in, must have been about 2001, 2002, because it came out in Power Regions in 2001. My auntie bought it for me. I was in a Woolworths or a it was Woolworths, which is a shop that we used to have here in the UK. And I just saw it there on the shelf for maybe 20, 30 quid. And I said, oh, are you okay if you buy that for me? Because she'd asked if she could get something. I said, is it all right if I get that? It is a bit expensive, though. So obviously I don't mind if you say no. And she said, no, that's absolutely fine, because I was being quite kind about it. So she bought it for me, and I took it home and I played it. And I was a big fan of Digimon anyway. I already watched the anime and dived into all the extra bits elsewhere. And a friend of mine had the VPET, but outside of the really, really ropey translation, which is utterly stellar in its badness, effectively, I thought it was an amazingly well put together RPG. Basically, the premise is you go to the digital world and you've got to rescue the monsters dotted around the island who have lost their memory effectively and forgotten why they moved out of the city. And it takes on the form, unlike Pokemon, where you catch them all. With this, you've got one Digimon who goes through a life cycle and will evolve depending on how you look after it and how you train it, or how you don't do either of those things. And after a certain amount of time, it will die and reincarnate as an egg for you to start again. And it's basically just got branched evolutions from this one Digimon that you've got. It's based on the little keychain VPETs rather than the anime or anything else. So it doesn't have the full range of evolution levels that the anime was going into at the time. And a lot of the evolutions don't make sense for anyone that's only followed the anime, where they think that evolutions follow a set path, but that's not how it works in Digimon. Digimon follows a more correct version of evolution where you can evolve depending on what happens. Some of the evolutions you get by actually dying, for example, or mistreating your Digimon. But it's a very basic RPG in a lot of regards. You train your monster up to have more attacks or be able to actually order it around in the first place. And then just go around and do specific, what would be known as boss fights to recruit Digimon. And once you've rescued enough, you unlock the final dungeon. So you don't actually need to recruit every single Digimon in the game to get to the finale. And then in the finale, you go and beat what is considered at the time the ultimate Digimon, Machine Dramon. And then you save the island and everyone's happy, TM medals all round and all that. But there's a lot of depth to its RPG system and the raising system, which is why I consider it such a strong game in general. Once you've pierced that difficulty at the first, a lot of people don't understand how it works, but if you actually talk to the NPCs around the town, they basically explain everything to you properly, and then you'll understand how it works. beyond that, the one thing it is known for is that PAL copies in a lot of parts of PAL regions can't actually be completed due to a game-breaking bug that prevents you accessing a dungeon. UK copies were not affected by that, thankfully, but I think ones in like Italy and Spain were effectively rendering that you can't complete the game. US copies had a couple of game-breaking bugs as well, but they didn't stop you completing the game as long as you avoided them. But it means that a PAL UK copy is the most bug-free version you can actually play outside of the Japanese version. So there's a little fun fact for everybody as well. Is this a game you're aware of or played in any way, John?
I remember it being released. It's not one I played because not having a PlayStation. And I watched the anime as well. I really enjoyed it, actually, because I know back when it came out, at least, you know, where I grew up, it was kind of like a Pokemon versus Digimon kind of thing. But it was its own thing. And I think looking back, I think it told a more interesting story compared to Pokemon, which go at me. It's, you know, it's like kids get trapped in a digital world and have that kind of adventure versus Pokemon, where it's like, okay, we're trying to follow the storyline of the games. But Digimon is also, I think, a series that has evolved, has evolved a lot more compared to Pokemon, because like we're still getting Digimon games now, and you know, like I've never played a Digimon game, but it's been interesting to see the ones that have been coming out recently because they've sounded interesting. I mean, okay, not to go too much of a tangent, but I think you know more about those as well. Like, you know, if listeners are interested, Martin, you know, is it like Cyber Sleuth? I think is one of the titles.
Well, I'm going to swing back to the Digimon series for my number 11, so I'll come to that again when I hit my 11th game. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. In which case, then I will move on to my next game. And okay, I said earlier on about not playing the same games from the same series. I'll do one per series. My next two titles, I do not count as part of the mainline Final Fantasy series, so that's like a loophole. But this one is Final Fantasy Legend 2 on the Game Boy. And for those who don't know, this is actually a Saga game, but it was branded as Final Fantasy because Final Fantasy was a known brand in the West, and they were trying to capitalize on it. So I picked this up back when I was a kid. I got it from a secondhand game shop I loved going into. I got there were 4 Game Boy Final Fantasy games that were released. Final Fantasy Adventure, which was actually the first Mana game, and then Legends 1 to 3, which were Saga games. So as a kid, I could only beat Legend 3. First Legend game, I got to the final boss, could not beat. I then beat that game in 2020, but I never beat Legend 2. So I then got my original cartridge and then restarted the game, and I finally beat it. And it was such a good feeling, a game that I couldn't beat as a kid, that I had some fond memories of coming back to it and then actually beating the game. I suppose like you with Skies of Arcadia, Martin, but it was nice to like actually put the time in, and I still think it really does hold up as a good RPG. And if you want to give it a try, there have now been color hacks of all 4 of these games. So if the idea of it being black and white puts you off, you can get a color hack to, well, make it colorful. And if that being said, if you don't want to have to faff around with like Game Boy emulation or Game Boy, the 3 Legend games were collected and re-released as a Saga collection, so you can play it that way as well, which I'm guessing has some quality of life improvements. I guess I don't own it. Yeah, Martin, have you played Legend 2?
So Legend 2 was the one that I did play back in the day to a degree. A friend of mine lent it to me after I was aware of or had played Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation. He just lent me the Game Boy cartridge once, and I was able to play through it quite a fair bit. I struggled at first, but then I got to grips with it, and I was able to get probably about 50% of the way through. Never finished it because I hit a stumbling block that was constantly beating me, and I just couldn't progress, so I just moved on to something else. had a very large range of characters to pick from, because you pick your characters at the start of it, if I remember rightly, don't you? And I
And
like
depending on what you pick affects the difficulty of the game.
Well, there you go. So more information. I liked the idea of being able to pick things like slimes and robots and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was never going to top an RPG list for me. I certainly didn't consider it one of the greatest games I'd ever played, but I did enjoy my time with it quite a fair bit. And it is one that I do want to go back to. I recently did start playing through the Game Boy Final Fantasy games that aren't Final Fantasy games, with the DX color hacks, and I did pick up the Saga and the Mana collections on the Switch as well. So I've got plenty of opportunities to play it. I just need to get round to it. But yeah, it's I know it's one that you really, really enjoyed, because you've obviously got that nostalgia for it from
definitely.
that secondhand shop. So yeah.
Cool. Okay. So your game number 10.
So I'm swinging back to the Zelda series, and I'm playing. Well, I played for my 10th game what I consider to be the next slightly better than Skyward Sword, but next worst Zelda game in my opinion. And I'm going to get an awful lot of boos for this, but Breath of the Wild.
I haven't played it, but just in case, I'll go boo. But I haven't played the game, so I can't comment.
I do not understand why everyone hails this as the second coming of Christ. It was a very bland overworld with long stretches of absolutely nothing, padded out backtracking and exploration with like hundreds and hundreds of silly little koroks to find, which could have been condensed by an awful lot. The combat was atrocious. Notwithstanding the breaking weapons, the scaled combat where I've got a full roster of hearts and several armor upgrades, and a basic bokoblin will come along and destroy me in 3 hits. I detested every second of the combat in every way. The dungeons I thought were really, really good. Like the puzzles were nicely set out. I was utterly useless at them. I had to use a guide to get through it. Because I just don't seem to gel well with Zelda puzzles in general. But I did like the way they were set up. It was quite good from a story perspective in the way it was put forward, I thought. It certainly looked nice. There were some fun concepts to it, like the cooking, and some of the collectibles were quite good fun to use. I liked the way that you could magic up bombs or move things around and all this other stuff. But all round, I generally consider it a 6 out of 10 at best game. There was just too much in it that I found negative, and I will die on that hill until beyond my grave. Yeah, you said you haven't played it at all, have you?
No. Like I say, I don't own a Wii U, I don't own a Switch, so I don't think I'll ever get the chance to play it. I mean, because I heard like all the people talking such good things about it, but I guess 2 things I don't think I liked from what I heard was the stamina meter.
Oh, awful! Worst thing ever.
And the weapon durability.
Yeah, I played Tears of the Kingdom this year for the challenge, and I consider that a significantly better game, because even though the combat is still crap, they did improve it to a point where it was a lot more palatable. So I would definitely urge people to play Tears of the Kingdom. Unfortunately, it is a sequel, so you know you still need to go through Breath of the Wild. But yeah, Breath of the Wild just doesn't need to exist, in my opinion. I promise I do love the Zelda series. Wind Waker is phenomenal. Link's Awakening and the 2 Oracle games on Game Boy are phenomenal. Link to the Past and Link Between Worlds, which I also completed this year, the latter one, phenomenal. I'm enjoying Four Swords Adventure on the GameCube, which I've been playing a little bit recently. I just utterly detest Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild beyond belief. And I will say no more for fear of turning all of our listeners off. So what was your next game, John?
So my next game was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest on the SNES.
Oh, what a game.
And like I say, I don't consider this like mainline Final Fantasy. So again, this is that loophole of like it has the Final Fantasy name, but it's its own entity. So my history with the game is that I remember I do not remember it being released. Didn't have a SNES, and after the fact, it was like meant to be like baby's first RPG. So I never really thought about playing it. And then when YouTube was like becoming a thing, and then like years later, like finding retro YouTube channels. This was like 10 years ago, by the way. And then people talk about like, oh, Mr. Quest, you know, blah blah blah. Like, okay, well, maybe one day. And then I got a SNES Classic, and I hacked it, and I put extra games on it. One of which was Mystic Quest. Again, not really had a plan to play it, but then my eldest, you know, who was only 4, what was he? Yeah, 3 or 4 at the time, like started noticing that I was playing games and wanted to get involved. So then we didn't start with Mystic Quest, we started with something else. But then it was like, oh, we're gonna play next. So I was like, okay, what can we do? Okay, I know, let's do Mystic Quest. You know, that would be something that hopefully he can like play with me, and being baby's first RPG won't be like that difficult. You know, turn-based combat, so you don't have to worry about quick reflexes or anything. And we had such a great time. Like, you know, even though like it's a very bare bones kind of story, but he was fully like into it. Like, you know, we would get these different characters who would leave and they would come back, and like, you know, he cared about them. Like, you know, he's so happy to see them again, and he liked the different weapons we get, because in this game you get weapons that you can use in the overworld. Like, you know, you get like a axe to chop down trees that are in your way, for example, and you could also jump over obstacles. And so he would like jump, you know, he would do like that kind of platforming stuff, and like he has such a great time. And the music was excellent, and like, so I was honestly surprised by this. Don't get me wrong, like if I was just playing this like on my own, like now, I'll probably be like, yeah, it's a bit simplistic. But the memory that I've made with my son, you know, is like made it like 100 times better. And for anyone interested, someone is actually porting it to the Mega Drive / Genesis. So, you know, Sega fans will be able to play it as well if they want to going forward. But I could tell by, you know, your tone, Martin, that you've played this as well.
Yeah, this was one of the early games I emulated on the SNES in 2000, 2001. And I was on online forums and stuff with Americans who'd obviously played it. I don't think it was as popular in PAL regions, although we did get it released here, albeit without the Final Fantasy name, I don't think. So I was aware it was considered a baby steps Final Fantasy RPG, and because obviously I was playing the American ROMs, I saw it was called Final Fantasy, and I knew the series by that point because I played 1 to 8. So I gave it a try, and it's very easy. It's very simplistic. I think it's a great fun game. It deserves its place as a beginner RPG, but there's a good reason for that. And I'm going to use a really odd metaphor here. Everyone knows the film series Twilight. It has its fans. It has lots of people like me who think it's a load of rubbish. However, things like that exist to get people into certain genres. And if someone has gotten into the horror genre by way of Twilight, that's absolutely fine. And it's the same here. If someone's gotten into RPGs because they've enjoyed their time with Mystic Quest, then it's done its job. And we've now got people enjoying other RPGs as a result of playing this. So, you know, it's a great little game purely for that. You know, if we can make things more accessible to people, it gets people into these things. I certainly enjoyed the cast. I liked the action elements of it, where you're using the bombs and the claw and stuff outside of battles as well. I did like, obviously, the music. It was really good. I think some of it's been put in the recent Final Fantasy Theatrhythm music game as well, so it hasn't been completely forgotten by Square, which is great. But I mean, there's not much else to say that you haven't already covered, but it's definitely worth playing for absolutely anyone. regardless of how simplistic it is just all round a fun game to play.
Yeah, so if people have heard of this game and had like that same kind of expectation of being, baby's first RPG, maybe this will convince you to go and give it a try. So, Martin, game 11 for you.
We'll notice a pattern here. I'm swinging back to a franchise. So I've gone back to Digimon for my 11th game. And it is one I had completed before to a degree. I hadn't 100% completed it, but I'd done the main story and a few other bits. And this was the more recent Switch release of Digimon World Next Order. So I got it on the PlayStation 4 several years ago. It was originally a PSP game that got upgraded, so to speak, for the PS4 a few years later. I played it, I completed it, I put it away and didn't play it again, and only picked up the Switch version by virtue of one tiny little feature, and that was an easy mode. You're allowed to laugh.
Nothing wrong with an easy mode.
The game is actually a sequel to the original Digimon World. The character you play as in Digimon World comes back as an adult in this one. So it is very much a sequel. It follows the same vein where you're raising your Digimon rather than catching them all or whatever, like the Digimon story series, like Cyber Sleuth, which you mentioned earlier. But with this one, the twist is you've actually got two Digimon partners, so you've got to raise them both at the same time. But this obviously allows you to do things like the combination evolutions, which are known as Jogress or DNA Digivolution in the West. So it adds a lot of aspects on that regard. But I think it was a really enjoyable game. The story was fun. The voice acting was a little bit cringy in places, but it was overall relatively well done. There were a lot of different areas. There was a lot to do, and there were tons of evolutions in it for you to get. But what killed the game for me was the difficulty. Not because it was difficult, but because the difficulty was all over the place. You'd be fighting the easiest high evolution Digimon ever 1 minute, and then you'd find a baby Digimon the next minute that was so incredibly tough it would kill you in 2 hits, and you'd just be sat wondering what the hell happened. And it was so up and down. I think that's where the issue with the game lay. When I played it last year on the Switch, that easy mode alleviated some of those issues. The difficulty curve was still there, but because it was easier, it made it a lot more accessible. And I was actually able to do a lot more of the content I couldn't complete before because it was slightly easier. It is a good game. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't think it tops the original Digimon World for me. Because that game was just an absolute classic, whereas this is just a really, really good game. But yeah, I do recommend it to people, but it wouldn't be my first Digimon game to recommend. With the more recent ones, I would certainly recommend Cyber Sleuth, because that one is a very accessible game with a good difficulty curve, and it's got a lot to it. And obviously you've had other games recently as well, like Digimon Survive, which was a visual novel with strategy RPG combat, which was really good. And I believe Time Strangers has just come out on the PlayStation 5, which I don't have yet, but it looks absolutely stellar, and I can't wait to try it out. But yeah, Digimon World Next Order it's a good game. It just needed that difficulty balancing a hell of a lot more than it actually was. I'm going to assume you've probably not played it.
And you would assume correct. I don't think I've ever played actually a Digimon game.
Blasphemy of the highest order.
Afraid so.
Right, well, on that note then, what was your grand finale for the year?
So, for the grand finale, game number 12, it was the magnum opus of Miss Walker Game Studios, and that is Lost Odyssey on the Xbox 360. So this is what some consider to be the true Final Fantasy 13, made by a bunch of people who made original Final Fantasy games. Has music by Noboru Uematsu. I probably just butchered the name. and in it you play as a immortal, so someone who cannot die. Even though if you get a party wipe, it's a game over. I'm a bit confused at that point. But you play through this game. You get random encounters, have turn-based combat, fantastic music. I wish the soundtrack was actually not stupidly expensive to buy on CD. And it's a game that I wish more people would play. But because it's on 360, even though anyone who has a Xbox that's a higher generation than the 360 can just put the disc in or get it from the Xbox store, people haven't played this game. Even like other friends of mine, or ours actually, who who love RPGs, but they refuse to play Xbox, so they won't play this, and it is a huge shame. But Microsoft were the publisher, and the fact that we've also never got a sequel to this is also a crying shame. It's a fantastic game. Like, I did be wrong, there are a couple of moments where, you know, one of the hardest boss battles is like the first or second boss, because you only have like a few characters and you can't really do much grinding up. So, but otherwise, you know, I love playing through this game. And in a way, it was, you know, when you finish a game and it's just like you have that feeling of it's over. Oh, I could go and play something else. So, yeah, Lost Odyssey, another game that I feel like everyone should play because I think it's that good. But you need an Xbox to play it. Martin, have you played Lost Odyssey?
I sacrilegiously have not, unfortunately. I've never owned any of the Xbox line of consoles, so pretty much every single game on them I've not played. I remember Lost Odyssey coming out. I remember seeing like reviews and news articles about it and thought it looked amazing, but I didn't have a 360, so I never got to play it. I am slowly collecting Xbox games and probably move on to 360 as well, pending getting the consoles. So hopefully at some point I will give it a try because it does look like a game that's definitely up my street. But no, unfortunately, I've not touched it in any way, shape or form.
No, fair enough. In which case then, what was your game number 12?
So my grand finale for the first RPG challenge is quite possibly the best game of all time. And I am not going to take that back in any way, shape or form. We're going handheld. We're going to a Camelot series, which sadly the third game. We are playing, or I have played for the probably billionth time, Golden Sun.
Yes, a fantastic. Duo.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But
So
I didn't just play Golden Sun. I played Golden Sun: The Lost Age as well, because they are two parts of the same game, because they are just too big for one cartridge. So I played both back to back, using the password system to carry over my save data, because I have the games complete in box on Game Boy Advance. I've never sold them, and I never will, because it is my number one game of all time. But they released them for the Switch Online service. So I thought I'd like to play them on a telly rather than staring at my small Game Boy Advance screen or getting my GameCube Game Boy player out. So I played them on the Switch Online service, just for ease. The fact I could just literally save where I was if I was in the middle of a battle and got called away, because I've completed the games hundreds of times in the past. So, you know, it's no bones to me to be a little bit quality of life at this point with it. I couldn't sell this game enough if I tried. It effectively follows a lot of personality and aesthetic beats from Camelot Shining Force 3 on the Sega Saturn, with the way that the character models are and the fact that it uses speech bubbles with what we now call emojis, but back at the time would have been stuff like emoticons or whatever you want to call it, sort of telling you how a character's feeling. And, you know, the character models will move around with little sweat marks on when someone said something a little bit, what they gone on about there, as well as obviously the text of the game itself. The soundtrack is done by Motoi Sakuraba, who has never released a bad soundtrack in his life. My favorite composer. It is a crime that it has never been released on any media at all. The only way you can listen to it is by a game rip, effectively. So it's such a shame. But effectively, you are playing some adepts, which is what they know their magic users are, as in a world where alchemy has been sealed away. And there's two opposing groups, one that's trying to release alchemy, one that's trying to stop alchemy from being released. And the first game follows Isaac and his party, where they're trying to stop alchemy being released. And then the sequel follows the antagonists, or the people with the antagonists, who are some of Isaac's childhood friends who are actually trying to release alchemy. And you find out why. And at a pivotal point in the Lost Age, the two parties join up with a common purpose, and you actually get access to all 8 characters to use in any combination you like in battles. And everything that you've got on your party at the end of the original Golden Sun, as well as their levels and everything, will be carried over if you use the link cable or the password system. So it creates that absolutely epic adventure, which I could happily play through again and again and again and not get bored of. Like the game is just perfect, in my opinion. Have you played much of Golden Sun or completed it before?
So, Golden Sun, I remember seeing it in like the UK like game magazines before it came out, and I don't know if it was necessarily day one purchase or if it was like, you know, the next birthday or Christmas or whatever it was when it came out. But I played that thing to death. Like the game ends on a cliffhanger because part 2 is coming out, The Lost Age, and I could not wait for Lost Age to come out. After beating the game, I moved on to something else. But before Lost Age was released, I went back to Golden Sun to level up my characters so that I had unlocked all of their moves for importing into the Lost Age. Because I heard, like, you know, the fact that you can either use a link cable or use the password system. I was like, okay, you know, I'm waiting. I'm going to level them up. Then Lost Age was like, you know, a day one purchase for me. And again, I absolutely, you know, love playing through that, especially when you got then like both parties, like the party for the first game, the party for the second game together, is to have 8 characters, and then just to be able to like do the ultimate summon of like, yeah, from all the Jinn that you've managed to get through the game. And I remember, in like sixth form, there was a couple of us who had like Game Boys. There was sometimes do like, you know, link cable battles and things. Someone else had The Lost Age, and so a friend of mine like was going up against someone else who had The Lost Age, and so I lent him my cartridge, and then like they went up against each other, and then he, you know, my friend who was using my cartridge, you know, absolutely decimated the other guy, because I had like all the Jinn from like the first game to do this ultimate summon, which he didn't have, and he was just like, "What the hell?" What the? You know, like he was really upset about it. So like the fact, because, you know, felt like we cheated. Well, I suppose in a way I had led the cartridge, so probably had, but still, it was just, yeah, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
I did try.
No, carry on.
As I say, like I tried Dark Dawn via a flash cartridge for my DS again, like 12 years ago or something, and it didn't grab me initially, so I didn't really carry on with it. I put like maybe half an hour into it. I mean, did you ever try the DS? I say sequel.
Yeah, well, it is a sequel, isn't it? Because it's set 18 or 20 years later. So I picked up Dark Dawn day one because obviously Golden Sun #1 fan. I actually really enjoyed it. I completed it all the way through, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, it wasn't up to the same standard as the GBA games, but it was still a perfectly good adventure, in my opinion. It's just a shame that it ended on a cliffhanger that will probably never be finished.
It ends on a cliffhanger again.
It does end on a cliffhanger, which, yeah, we're never going to see the sequel anytime soon, which is a real shame, because it also had a party of 8 in it, and they massively upgraded and overhauled the battle system. So whereas in the first game you had like 2 dedicated healers who were both of a certain element in this one, they actually changed the elements up where actually the Earth Adept was one of the healers. So it varied it up quite nicely. But obviously, listening to your story about Golden Sun, I actually first encountered it because I was emulating GBA games, and I played it through to completion on emulation. So I then picked up the Game Boy Advance in late 2001, early 2002, I think it was. And Golden Sun was the game I bought with it on the day because I loved it so much, and I again completed it again on cartridge. And I couldn't wait for the Lost Age so much that I actually imported the American version because I did not want to wait. And rather blasphemy-wise, I struggled with it at first. I couldn't work out what I had to do. So I actually put the game down for quite a significant amount of time and didn't play it. I did pick it up again that same year and ended up going through to full completion and considered it, again, just as good as the first part in every way. And I couldn't get enough of it after that. But it was just that initial little stumbling block. And all it was that I'd just not gone left at the start of the game. You got on the world, you got on the world map and you reach a fork, and I went right and I did loads of towns and dungeons and stuff, and I couldn't work out why I couldn't progress any further. And all it was just going left to get the lash synergy to use the ropes. I just didn't realise that there was anything down that left fork, and so that was the stumbling block that made me put the game down for a little while because loads of other stuff was coming out. So sometimes it's just a little simple thing that can, make a game difficult for you. And I'll always curse that little memory. It's just the game is amazing. It's definitely you can't play them out of order. You've got to play part 1 and part 2 together.
Yeah,
you're gonna miss out on some Jinn, and which is like the little summon creatures that you attach to your party to change their job classes and their stats. And you won't get some of the summons as well, because some of those you can only get if you've got all the Jinn. Because the second part actually added multiple element summons. So the original game just had single element summons, depending on whether you had 1, 2, 3, or 4 set. And it was literally just fire, earth, water, and wind, and that was it. Whereas the second one would introduce multi-element ones. So you have, like, if you've got 1 Mars Jinn and 2 Venus Jinn set, or unset, then you can have this summon instead. So it really boosted everything up to 11, and it was a nice decent length, that they're not too short. We're not talking 20-hour RPGs, but they're not like 80-90 hour epics either. They're just a perfect sort of in the middle length with a great cast, great music, great graphics. The story's told at a nice pace, and I don't feel the game ever outstays its welcome. And with the fact that you can, like, funny enough, Mystic Quest, you can use the magic outside of battle to actually complete platforming elements, like, freezing blocks to jump across, or moving ropes around and things like that. It gives it absolutely everything. So it is, in my opinion, the perfect game.
And the sequel is reason why I struggle with the word sequel is because the fact that Lost Age should be the sequel, but it's part 2 of the game. I don't either way, but the fact that Dark Dawn does not get a sequel, it leads to a cliffhanger, makes me think I shouldn't start the game because I don't want to be in that position of like stuck with something that's not going to be finished. But anyway,
it's lovely seeing what's happened to a lot of the characters and all that. But yeah, like the story that you follow does finish, but then all the characters go home effectively, and then something happens, and then it ends, and you're like, what?
Right, okay.
And the fact we've not had a sequel in 15 years is driving me up the wall.
Very telling.
Yeah, it's a shame that all Camelot do nowadays is Mario Football and Mario Baseball and basically Mario sports games.
Yeah.
They've unfortunately fallen so far from their absolute tip-top position when they were doing Shining Force 3 and Golden Sun. But there we go. That's 24 RPGs that we completed
last
year.
So Yeah. So, like I say, Ron, the reason why I wanted to like kind of talk about this is because I feel like there might be other people who may be avoiding playing RPGs because of this view that, yeah, if you're gonna pick up Persona 5, like I said, then you're gonna have to invest a lot of time. And there are a lot of other RPGs which are of similar kind of like, oh, these are 100-hour adventures. It's just like not everything needs to take forever to beat. You can have games that can be beaten a lot quicker and still have a rewarding experience.
Yeah, I
So
mean, Super
hopefully
Mario RPG took less than 20 hours. That's not
Yeah,
a massive
exactly.
length for an RPG at all.
Exactly. So I say, like, if you want to play an RPG but don't want to have to get the time commitment, then check out some of the games we've recommended here. And some of them, like I have heavily suggested you use emulation for, so it won't even cost you anything. So, but yeah, otherwise, yeah, pick out an RPG and give it a try.
Exactly.
Right, and so this has been the Pixel panel, and thank you, the AI bot masquerading as Lanceroy, and we will, I say we, well, maybe somebody will catch you next time. Say
Yep.
goodbye, Martin.
Goodbye.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, folks, that's game over for this episode of Retro Reloaded. Thanks for joining me on this retro adventure. If you loved today's trip down memory lane, then consider helping me keep the nostalgia alive by supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/retro reloaded. You'll get early episodes, bonus content, and a chance to pick the next game that we reload. Feel free to let me know your thoughts about the podcast, and until next time, keep those controllers charged.